Thanks for that. The bullets were actually a separate story from lighting the cemetery on fire. I actually did that with matches. So, yeah. So, do I hold this? Do I put this right here? Why the hell am I standing here? First, I wanted to start by letting you know that I didn't want to be here. Last year, as they were about to launch Creative Mornings, the ever-lovable Mark Bussey sent me an email saying that I had been deemed uber creative by my peers, and that he wanted me to stand up here for 20 minutes and do a talk about anything that I wanted, as long as it somehow tied into creativity. And just before he asked me, I'd been asked by another series to talk about Vancouver's Awesome and my big message, but I had to decline it because while I'm all about telling you how awesome Vancouver is every day, all day, there's no big talk in that. You know, there's I founded this website 4 years ago that shares all the positive things about going on in your city, but that's it. You know, Vancouver is awesome, and there's no TED talk in that. There's not even an interesting Vancouver talk in that. There's a couple tweets in that, and there's a bunch of blog stuff. So at the time that Mark had asked me to come and speak, I had overcommitted to a bunch of things, and I was actually diagnosed with a stress-induced eye disease, which we'll get to a little bit later. So I told him that I didn't have anything that I really wanted to talk about that involved my work or creativity, but if he would allow me to come up here and just tell some bullshit stories about fishing, that I would come in. So I was really hoping to throw him off, and I was hoping that he was going to be like, you know what, we'll be here for a couple years, take your time, think of something really good, and come back to us, you know. But actually, it had the reverse effect in that he was thrilled that I was going to come in and do a talk about fishing. So he had me on the hook, as it were. I've been a fisherman as long as I can remember. And I mean, I've caught thousands of trout in BC lakes over the years. I've got a fishing rod that's probably older than a lot of the people in this room that I've used over the years. And I could tell you some really great fishing stories. But the sad part of that is that fishing stories are generally really fucking boring, unless you're a fisherman, in which case, talk to me later and give me your phone number and we'll exchange some fishing stories. But, I mean, it's like walking somebody through a game of beach volleyball that you just watched on TSN. It's like, unless that person's really into the sun and the sand and the culture of beach volleyball, they're just going to nod at you, like you all are probably doing right now, kind of, and change the subject at the end of it. And to something interesting. But yeah, so yeah, I'm not just going to stand up here and tell you some boring ass fishing stories, but I am going to talk about fishing. But first, we're going to get back to this stress-induced eye disease that I was diagnosed with almost a year to the day. Last Easter, I was blessed with the news that I had conducted. Basically, it's due to stress, and it's called central serous retinopathy. Has anybody ever heard of it? It's a rare eye disease. So, then my next question was, oh, anybody heard of it? Anybody have it? So obviously, none of you have it. But what happens when you have it is that fluid leaks from behind your retina and forms a bubble there, kind of like a blister would be on the back of your foot. That's what that little circle is. That's actually a side that's an ultrasound of my eye, the side of it, that's where the bubble of fluid built up. And so, since the bubble is directly behind your eye, what results is this dark, blurry spot right in the center of your field of vision. So, let's say you were looking at a photo of my beautiful family, and you didn't have it, that's what you would see. But if you were me and you had it, that's what you would see. Or if you're looking at your computer, all day, you might see something like this. Or this. Or this. So as somebody that spends half their life looking at their computer and the other half of it trying to figure out ways to take my eyes off of it and put them on that beautiful family of mine, to say the least, it really sucked. And it sucked, but when you boil it down, it's not really a big deal. Like, nobody's ever gone blind from this. I say it's a rare eye disease. Nobody's ever fucking heard of it, but it's not a. It goes away. It's supposed to go away in 6 months. The bubble dissipates and you reduce your stress, and the treatment for it, which there really isn't any, is to just live. The doctor told me of another treatment, and in his words, that involved a sketchy operation. So that was reassuring. So basically that's for people that don't have the patience or don't have the time to de-stress and figure out a way to reduce your stress, and they cauterize the back of your retina with a laser, and that speeds up the healing process. It doesn't do anything different than what you're doing. So that's stupid. So I chose to just let it heal by itself, but knowing that I was going to have to figure out a way to de-stress while keeping gas in the tank. But how do you do that? You know, how do you continue your work that you love? Like, I love my work, but how do you feed your family that you can barely see, and reduce your stress at the same time, but spend less time at your desk? So the answer was going to have to involve unplugging and removing myself from anywhere with 3G coverage, and hanging out in this room for 6 months wasn't an option at the time. Sorry, Erwin. That joke was supposed to be actually funny, but and then Erwin was going to say that you can contribute to their fundraising thing, and then maybe the 3G will actually come into this room. So donate to W2 and laugh at my next joke. So I decided to go out and explore the province while technically still working. So I decided to become a part-time travel writer, and this is where our Super Neighbors blog posts came from. Essentially, it's a way for me to de-stress while also incorporating non-Vancouver content into the stream, while still making it relevant to, you know, we talk all about what makes Vancouver awesome, and what makes this particular series awesome is that it only takes a couple or a few hours for you to get to one of these places, and it's kind of refreshing, because I'm sure you're all bored of hearing about our navel all the time. But what I quickly learned when I was researching on how I was going to do this was that there's something in the travel industry called a fam trip, which means that resorts or tourism-based businesses will host you for free in exchange for writing about them. You know, like, regardless of whether or not the only thing you write about is good stuff, like we do. Like, they host people just for any sort of exposure that you can give them. So for us, it's like a guaranteed that I'm going to write something nice about them. So it's pretty easy for me to get to these destinations that we're going to. So the first place that I went to is a place called Sonora Resort. Has anybody been there? Come on, nobody's been there? You've been there. Okay, you've been there. A couple people. Maurice has been there. Did you pay to go there? You went on a fam trip, right? So, fam trip? Nobody in this room has paid to go there. So, you should pay to go there, actually, yeah. That's what I should be telling you. So, honestly, if I had the money, if I had thousands of dollars to spend to go to a fishing resort, that would be the first one I would go to. And I mean, you fly up there in their private jet. It's owned by the people that own London Drugs, and so they have London Air at their disposal. Not a jet, I'm sorry, that's not a jet. That's not a chopper either, as I've been told. It's a helicopter. It's not a helijet. It's a London Air. So, and they're great. You should fly London Air. But yeah, look at that place. It's amazing. That's the only way you can get there unless you have a boat and a lot of time. But it exposed me to salmon, and it got me thinking about them, and for obvious reasons. This is a photo of the first salmon that I ever caught at my feet. I didn't catch it at my feet. It's an 11.5-pound spring salmon that I caught on that trip to Sonora. And you know, I talk about the thousands of rainbow trout that I've caught in my life, and if I had to compare them to this, I mean, that's an exaggeration. They're not all that size, but that's one that I caught recently. So the experience is obviously way different, and so I'll just go back. I like doing this. The experience it's always going to be amazing to catch a little fish. Like, that's fun. I really enjoy that, and that's unplugging too. But I fell in love with salmon after this trip to Sonora. So I started to research them a little bit. And after about 5 minutes, in the world of salmon on the West Coast, you run into these guys, the Pacific Salmon Foundation. Has anybody heard of these guys? Yeah? Cool. So basically, they're a charity. They've been around since 1987. And they take in donations, and they take in grants and government money to basically ensure the future of wild salmon and their ecosystems, rivers, and etc. For the future. And one of the coolest fundraising initiatives that they have is something that they do that is called the DFO conservation stamp. Sorry. So that's my fishing license when I went to Sonora. That's an old license. Does that say $6 or $6.30? $6.30. Doesn't really matter. In order to go out fishing anywhere in the province, you need to buy a fishing license. Freshwater or saltwater, they have different licenses. And so if you want to actually if you actually want to catch a salmon and keep it, you have to buy this extra stamp that you get, that you put on your thing. So you get the stamp, which is actually really cool, and you get the right to keep salmon that you catch. The Department of Fisheries and Oceans, the DFO stamp is what it's called. They take a lot of the money from these stamps, and they put it back into the Pacific Salmon Foundation. So since 1991, they've raised $6.1 million for thousands of like stream restoration projects and all kinds of stuff that gets filtered through the Pacific Salmon Foundation. So that's like the best $6.30 that you'll ever invest in the future of salmon in this province. But to step back from the conservation side of it, what's really cool is that every year when they do this, the new stamp for your license, they get an artist to paint like a large-scale painting of a salmon in the wild. I think it might even be a contest. I'm not sure, but at the end of the year, you know, they shrink that down and they turn it into the stamp that you get. And at the end of the year, they do a big fundraising thing where they auction off the original painting, and that all goes back to charity as well, which is really cool. Those are some of the stamps, some of the paintings from over the years. But that's a really creative solution to a problem. And not because they utilize the stamp, like the design of the stamp in their fundraising. The most creative part of the entire organization to me is that it wasn't founded by government, it wasn't founded by hardcore environmentalists, it was founded by sport fishermen. This charity has a huge impact on Western Canada, like the salmon in Western Canada, and it was founded by regular folks like myself who want to ensure that in the future they have the right and the pleasure of going out to a river, a lake, the ocean, and essentially killing a fish and bringing it back to their family. Guys like this. A fucking explosion went off in my mind when I realized that this is where this came from. And it wasn't long after that I started discovering more and more creative problem solvers, as Gagan put it last month, involved in sport fishing. So that's on the left, that's the owner of the BC Sport Fishing Group. His name's Tony Newtbos. And that's me on the right, obviously. And that's the 75-year-old, 150-pound endangered sturgeon that I caught recently on a travel writing trip with Tony. When I was first looking into it, I was looking at sturgeon fishing, and I was kind of baffled. Like the people at the tourism board suggested that I go on a sturgeon trip, and all I knew at the time was that the sturgeon is a fish. The white Fraser River sturgeon, anyways, is a fish that's been fished so much that you're not allowed to keep it. If you keep one of these fish, you go to jail. And like the fact that people were going out on the river and catching them and then posing for trophy photos like this, it was like that really baffled me. There'd be something really wrong with that in my mind. So, but what I learned as I was investigating this travel writing story is that Tony's entire business, it exists around the idea of bringing these fish back to the river. over the last 100 years, they've been fished like really close to the brink, and there aren't any left that are this size. Come on now. That was caught like really close to where I caught mine. That's 800 pounds, and that was 1905. And they used to just pull those out of the river like nothing. But now, you know, there's really big fish in that river. This is a really big fish that we're holding, but it's like old growth. You know, it's like an old, and there's no big ones left. So, back in 1997, a group called the Fraser River Sturgeon Conservation Society was formed. This guy's the chairman, Rick Hansen. You might not know that about him. That's something that I learned too. He's on the Pacific Salmon Foundation board, and he's also the chairman of the board of this nonprofit, the Fraser River Sturgeon Conservation Society. So, I mean, they're a nonprofit, and their main intention is to, quote, identify and address issues that affect the recovery of the white sturgeon in the Fraser River watershed using critical data collected through an award-winning, volunteer-driven monitoring and assessment program. So what this means is that charter businesses like Tony's, as well as First Nations groups and some commercial fishermen, not many, but some of them participate in this thing, where they all contribute to keeping tabs on the fish in the river. So when Tony takes people out and they pay him good money to take them on a fishing adventure, they're essentially donating their time and efforts to tag and track sturgeon. So when I hauled in mine, the first thing that we did before we took that trophy photo was we measured it. After we scanned it with this weird little device that scans for the chip that's right there. And that's the number of the fish that I caught, because it had been caught before, and it had been tagged with one of these little microchips that the Sturgeon Conservation Society has installed 40,000 of these in fish over the last, since 1997. So basically, if it wouldn't have been in there, we would have installed it, and then it would have we would have measured it and collected all the data on this fish, and then put it into this database that we took this number. And since he's on the board, he texted that number in to one of the people, the executive director actually of the nonprofit, and she texted him back all of the times that my fish had been caught since like 2000 something, let's say. So he was like, this, it first was caught by the Alex Fraser, and it was this big, and this is the size that it was then, and it's been migrating. And so they're keeping tabs on the fish, and they're, who's that? The sound guy. Good God. So I'm pretty sure that it's only legal to catch sturgeon on the Fraser River because of this group doing this work. You know, it's not legal to keep them, but in order to insert these chips into their heads and track them and ensure that they're okay, they have to be caught. So instead of some asshole holding an endangered fish upside down with his hand jammed in its mouth, this is a photo of a conservation volunteer. Helping to ensure the future of this fish. And you hold it upside down like that just so you know it's not like, I'm not torturing the fish. You hold it upside down so it doesn't thrash around while you're measuring it. But I'm not going to fucking lie to you. Like, reeling in that fish was the experience of a lifetime for me. And the smile that you see on my face there, it's partly a like, we're doing a good thing out here smile, but it's mostly we caught a 150-pound fish smile like that. You'll never catch a fish that size. Maybe you will, actually. I'm not going to say you're not going to catch a fish that size. But anyway, so the reality is that Tony wouldn't be able to fill 22 boats. His charter business is 22 boats deep. He wouldn't be able to fill those boats with conservationists. It's the thrill of the fight that keeps him in business. But in the long term, it's the conservation work that he's doing that'll ultimately keep the sturgeon itself in business. That's a pretty creative way to make a living, if you ask me. And it's incredibly inspiring to me, as is the Pacific Salmon Foundation and the Sturgeon Society. They're both really big inspirations for me. And they've got nothing to do with this next small example of fishermen getting creative. And by fishermen, of course, I mean me again. So a few months back, a friend of mine told me about this place on Galliano Island that I absolutely had to visit for one of my travel story adventures. It's called Bodega Ridge Resort. Has anybody been there? A bunch of people have been there. A few people have been there. So this is it. And that's my dog, Frankie. That's it's pet friendly, which is great. So it's located on a 23-acre piece of land on Galliano Island, which is like a little more than an hour out of Vancouver, which is great. They've got 7 of these little cabins that you see pictured top left. 3 bedrooms. You can sleep like 8 people in there. Without trying to sell you too hard on the place, it's the perfect place to visit. But the only place that I found, the only thing that I found that was missing with it is fishing. We've returned 3 times since our first trip, and a lot of the time that we spend when we go there is spent just walking around the property because it's amazing. And on the top of the property are 2 man-made ponds that have been there, I don't know, 30, 40 years. This one's the smaller one. So the first time that I went there, I asked the owner, Jesse Kiefer, if there were fish in it, because it looks like there should be fish in there. And I keep nobody knows this, I wasn't even going to tell you this. I keep 2 fishing rods in the trunk of my car at all times, just in case. Most of the time I just commute to my office, but you never know when you're going to run into a small body of water. And you never know if there's going to be fish in it. So instead of taking my fishing rod out and testing the waters, which I probably should have done anyways because it would have been fun, but I asked Jesse, I was like, are there fish in this pond? And he told me he's been the owner since 2003, and so the guy that founded the resort and started it, and probably was the one that built these ponds, had originally stocked them with rainbow trout. Really small ones, and after a few years when he didn't catch any of them, he had assumed that they had died. So he drained the ponds someday for some reason, I don't know, maybe they're like the fire department uses them for fires or something, but he had to drain the pond to the very bottom one day, and there were these massive fish lurking in the bottom of it. So they didn't die, he just didn't know how the fuck to catch them. So, but either he couldn't stop the drainage in time or he didn't want to. I don't know what the case was, but the big fish died. And so now this pond is fallow. There's no fish in it. But the good news is that, proof in these massive fish that lived for years and years in his pond, fish can live in there. They can probably thrive in there. So I asked Jesse if he would give me permission to do some research on his behalf and see what it would take to put some fish in this pond again. And what I found out is that there's this really fairly simple process where you can apply for a backyard trout pond license in BC. So once you're approved, you get to go to a private trout hatchery and buy fish off of them that they've raised. And they come in, they dump them into your pond, and boom, you've got a mini fishery. You can catch them right away, depending on the size. That guy put small ones in, but you can buy larger ones. So I did some calling around to a number of different hatcheries, some on Vancouver Island, some in the Lower Mainland, and the best deal that I found was through this guy, this rad old dude actually named Bernie near Souk. Bernie runs a small operation called Mountain Valley Trout Farm out of his house. And usually when I call, his wife answers the phone, Bernie! Like it's great. And he's giving us a great deal. And so I decided, like, okay, this is the guy. And but all in with the license and the shipping of the fish and the fish themselves, it wasn't going to be cheap to stock this pond. So here's a photo of Jesse moments before I pitched the budget at him. I took him to Acme Cafe to butter him up. And this is the completed application for a trout farm that Jesse faxed in a few weeks ago. Needless to say, he took the bait. I was going to warn you about the fishing puns. There's been a couple more. But he's agreed to pay Bernie to put 500 trout in his pond. And he's even going to build a small pier on it with my help, of course. And the pier is going to go somewhere between him and the barn there. I'm not sure exactly where. And we're going to trim those. What is that? Grass. Make it a little more fishable. But so last week he got a call from the government letting him know that they're processing the application. It's kind of like a faceless, like, fax in and just wait. But he got confirmation back that they're reviewing it right now. So hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll be able to confirm our fish order with Bernie. Bernie! Then this summer, when we return to Bodega Ridge, me and Arlo, that's my son, and my wife, we're going to be able to throw a line in, we'll catch some trout, and then we'll take them back to our cabin and cook them up in the kitchen that's there and eat them. And so will you, which is probably why Jesse agreed for me to do this in the first place, because it'll be good for business, I imagine. It'll add an element of adventure to the resort, maybe leave a fishing rod in each of the closets of the cabin, so that people who are new to it can give it a try. And I just hope that it pays off for him as much as it's paid off for me so far, because it's been a lot of fun so far, and it's given me something to talk about that's hopefully not the really fucking boring fishing story that I promised not to tell you. So, and this. We're launching this summer, so stay tuned for that. That's all.
Okay, so I'll start off. Shall I start? Mr. Kronbauer.
Yes.
One time you and I were having a chat over dinner at Che Baba.
Delicious meal.
Delicious?
Oh yeah.
And you said something that seemed poignant to me as you were relating the fishing story, and it seemed kind of absent from just the way you downloaded today. You had said that it felt a little bit like helping your friend with his trout lake, and that was a creative solution to a problem that fed into your venting the way you lived your life. But it also seemed a little bit like a metaphor for the work you do in the creative community.
Yeah,
the seeds you plant. What on earth are we talking about?
I was gonna try and work that into the talk today, but I went over a little bit. I don't know. It kind of. I didn't really realize it until we were sitting there and talking about it. But the work that I am doing with this trout pond feels a lot like what I do with Vancouver's Awesome. In there's a lot of nutrients in that pond. Literally, and the fish can thrive in that pond, but they need somebody to usher them in, I guess, and to sort of provide that space for them. And I guess I feel like that's kind of what I do with Vancouver's Awesome. So, yeah. Hi guys.
And boom.
Tough questions? Easy questions?
Easy question.
Okay.
So what is the long-term vision for the Vancouver's Awesome brand? You mentioned Galliano is awesome, but do you plan to cover other cities in BC?
Yeah, we launched Whistler's Awesome maybe 10 months ago. And it's, yeah. Do you go to it?
Yeah, I'm from Whistler.
And you check out the site and you like it? And
my primary Whistler news source now.
Cool. And it's got a slightly different vibe than the Vancouver site. Yeah, so the plan is to, franchise out. Essentially, it's not technically a franchise, but it's like a license. And in Whistler, we've got Michelle LaRue has taken it, and she basically is the me of Whistler's Awesome, and she's taken it and is licensing it off of us, and using what we've developed here, and using me as a sort of mentor to roll out the same sort of thing there, and hopefully it'll turn into a business for her, because this now is my full-time job. So we're hoping to do that in all the major Canadian centers. Like I bought all the URLs originally in the beginning just for Canada, because I have some forethought, but haven't had the resources or the opportunity to roll them all out. So Toronto's Awesome is actually, one of our editors is moving there. Probably right now, he's probably driving there. So he's launching Toronto's Awesome in the next few weeks. And yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Kind of?
Yeah.
That's the long term. I mean, the long term is to just have a Canada-wide network that each site will have a widget on it that is like, hey, in Vancouver, check out the Vancouver site. Or, oh, in Winnipeg, you're familiar with it already, you know it, you're going to another city, it would kind of make sense for you to check in and use it as a travel resource, as well as for the locals, which is what we obviously write for. We're not a travel website. Yeah, thanks.
Over here.
Hey, just building off of what that question was, how difficult is it going to be to make those other Canadian sites be as good as the Vancouver one, when maybe those cities aren't as awful.
That's what I get every time when I mention like, but Calgary isn't awesome. You know, that's what I get when I tell people, oh, did you know we have Calgary's awesome, which nobody knows about because, not because the city isn't awesome, because it probably is, but the difficulty really lies in getting a leader and getting somebody really invested in it that is going to take the time to, that I've taken and the sort of dedication to it in not totally replicating what we've done here, but putting a lot of oomph behind it and building it out. So that's the major difficulty right now is finding people. Like that's why Calgary's Awesome is not that great of a website, sorry to say it, is that it has never really had a leader, and it's been kind of passed from person to person to person, and yeah, it really needs somebody to steer the ship. So that's the biggest challenge. And I mean, another challenge for me is that I'm the single full-time employee of Vancouver's Awesome, and I do everything. And so for me, it's hard for me to justify researching Winnipeg's, like who's the person in Winnipeg and finding that person. So that's a hard one too. So I mean, actually that's a good opportunity for me. If you know somebody in one of these major centers that wants to start one of these and you think is the right person for this, absolutely get in touch with me and put me in touch with that person, because that'd be really helpful.
It just occurred to me, my preference when we do these, because I want this to be about knowing each other too, when you ask the question, tell us who you are. That was my friend Aaron over there.
That was my friend Aaron too.
Come on, let's face it, we're all my friends with Aaron. That's my friend Richard Band, actually, who is co-host of Like Mind with myself and Nicole Hunter.
That's my new friend, Richard.
Richard. And this is my friend Pam.
Hey, bud.
Thanks.
Hi.
So, great job.
Thank you.
One of the interesting things that came up in our discussion, though, is that there's no tension in the idea of awesome and only positive, and that tension is an essential ingredient to creativity. So we're wondering if with the whole neighbor idea, it's hard to be a good neighbor. Sometimes that's the last person you want to talk to. Could you start to do?
You should meet my neighbors.
I love my neighbors, by the way, but you know, and there's one on the other side. It's a little quiet.
Tell me about it.
Anyway, how could you make sort of compare and contrast? So playing to strengths, but also playing against what's different. Because what one person thinks is awesome, the other person doesn't. So just the idea of neighbors and tension.
So what's the question? Sorry?
Should be creative.
Yeah.
Question.
Is there a role for tension?
Yeah.
Is there a role for tension? Sure. Yeah. I mean, on our website, we don't deal too much in tension, obviously. But that's definitely a valid question that I get asked all the time. And I feel like what we offer is a sort of not a quiet place, but just like a place where you can go to be reminded of all the great things that are happening due to tension, due to due to whatever creative processes need to happen, so yeah. Does that answer the question, or does that dodge the question? What's that?
It's pretty weak, but we'll go to the next one.
Oh, thanks, Mark. Thanks. Okay, sorry, let me expand on that a little bit. So I feel like the importance of what we're doing is to remind people that, yeah, it fucking sucks and I'll never own a home here because I can't afford to, but here's a lot of really good things about why you choose to stay here. And so our role is not to incite anger or incite, discourse, but it's to remind people of all the things that are great about here, which they aren't exposed to in any other media aside from Bob Nixon on CBC and Mike McCardle. So I feel like we fill this hole.
Hi everybody, I'm your new friend Sarah.
Hi Sarah.
Hey. We all know Vancouver is awesome, but what do we do to keep it awesome? And in the short term, how do we, in this room, make it awesomer?
Yeah, this is something that's come up a couple times recently. One that I can talk about, and one that I can't talk about. The one that not looking at you. Sorry, I'm looking at the guy behind you. So it's been, you know, rah rah, yay yay, everything's great. Fuck yeah, this city's great. That's what we do, right? And you know, like I answered the question, there's this hole that we fill. But at the same time, there's this responsibility to further the awesomeness of our city. And just last night, I went to. Did anybody else go to Bjarke Engel's talk last night at the Chan Center? That's people that weren't with me. So he's the architect that's doing that project at Howe and Granville, the twisty, sort of dodgy the building, and he did this great talk about cities and about his practice and stuff. And then at the end of it, Michael Green of Michael Green Architecture introduced this new website called Unsolicited Vancouver, and it's a place where you can go. And they asked 20 people in the city, if you were the city planner tomorrow, like they asked Ken Lum, Doug Copeland, a bunch of architects and people that I don't know their names. I know Ken Lum and Doug because they're artists, but there was like a list of sort of city planning minded type people that talked about what they would do if they were given the job of the city planner tomorrow. And so this website, unsolicitedvancouver.com, which you should visit today, it's a placeholder today, but they're going to have these 20 ideas from these people as well as Bjarke's talk, and then it's going to be this place over the next year where you can engage your ideas and give unsolicited ideas of what would make the city more awesome. My word, not their word. But we're partnering with them to help them promote what they're doing with the 20 thoughts from the big thinkers, and then also we're going to be posting some of that content on our website and encouraging people to visit this other website where they can go and help make the city more awesomer. So more stuff like that.
That was a much better question, Bob. Great answer.
Thank you.
You're doing better. Getting better.
Thanks.
Bob?
Hi.
Hi, blogger, designer. So you've got, I know your site, obviously there's a lot of people doing their own thing and everyone's got their column and ducks in order and it looks great. But I'm wondering, how do you keep people motivated on a daily basis to go and do that? I'm assuming people have side jobs because it's, in this world of blogging, a very hard thing to monetize. And I know you don't want to speak to a community that's too corporate, and I'm sure there's not a ton of ads for a good reason, but how do you strike a balance between engaging and building your audience and making it a worthy venture financially?
Do you feel like there's not that many ads on our website?
There's a lot of little icons and things.
Yeah? No?
That's what I don't know compared to who.
I look at it and I see a ton of ads to me. But how do I keep the writers motivated? Is that the question? Everybody in the beginning, 4 years ago, when I started it, I told my wife explicitly, like, this is just a side project. It's never going to make money. So don't look at it as like anything that's ever going to make money. So I had a great contract with Nike at the time. And so I just brought in all of a bunch of friends, like 30 people, and I was like, here are the rules. No negativity because of this, and no nudity because I don't want to contribute to the objectification of women on the internet. So those are the rules. Just share awesome stuff, and that was it. And after 6 months or so, I could set my watch to people signing on, like, yeah, I want to share awesome stuff, and then doing a couple posts, and then boom, they would fall off. And I started to think, like, what's going on here? How do I solve that? And the answer was to find people that are already engaged in things that they're doing. You know, like the dog guy has been with us since the beginning. The guy that publishes like a weekly photo of your dog that you submit, he edits that every single week, and he's been doing it for like 3 or 4 years. And he loves dogs. He's a dog walker. And you know, for him to spend like 30 minutes a week doing this thing that he also gets to help out the SPCA at the end of it because we partner with them, it's a feel-good thing for him, and it's fun, and he's a part of the community. And so the answer that I found to that problem was getting people like him, like, okay, you're gonna write about dogs, you're gonna write about theater on Thursday. And so if you fall off after 2 weeks, I can go, hey, instead of just going, hey, still interested in blogging about random awesome stuff, like I don't want to go to people and do that. So now it's like, it's actually, you have something invested in it, and it's like, hey, are you still interested in doing the dog thing? And if you're not, then we'll figure out a way to get somebody else involved to do it. So that's been a way that's been really helpful to manage it and keep people engaged. Yeah.
We have one question over the corner. Over here.
Hi, Bob.
Hi.
Amanda, your friend Amanda.
Hi, my friend Amanda.
I have a bit of a tough question, and I think it's probably a variation on some of the themes that have emerged, but is Vancouver too hypercritical for its own good? How does Vancouver is awesome, thriving, work in a city that many of us see as sort of in some ways very eager to eat its own food?
Yeah, is it too hypercritical for its own good? Maybe the answer could be yes, because VancouversAwesome.com does really well, and people love what we're doing. Perhaps, yeah, and well, yeah, in my opinion, absolutely, yeah. It grinds me. Like when I moved back, I was really happy to be here, and I didn't find that being shared anywhere. And there's definitely like, okay, let's work on things that are wrong with our city. But it seemed to me at the time, and it still does to a degree, that it's just overbearing, and the conversation is too much about, oh, this sucks, oh, this sucks, oh, this sucks, and it's not about solutions, and it's not about great stuff. So yeah, I do think a lot of the time we're a bit hypercritical, and it's just ingrained in us. I don't know where that comes from. Thanks for the question.
I like that question.
Was the answer okay, or was it terrible?
Well, that's a good question. But that's a kind of guess what we want.
I know.
For alumni of Good Mornings. Okay, so Brown, your name is Brown?
Brown Rage.
Okay, yeah. Brown Rage.
He uses Twitter hashtag. He uses Twitter handle.
So we're now new, some romance one on here. He has convinced me with his eyes that this is going to be the best final question.
I don't know if I'm ready. I need to ask the first question. What's your real name though? Because when I first came, I put VI Awesome as my name too, because I thought it was, oh, you put at. What the hell are you trying to say to me? Yeah.
Rob.
Hi, Rob.
And I work on Talent Time, actually. We've never met.
Oh,
so
cool.
Friends with Paul.
Talent Time every
first Wednesday of the month.
and it's a variety show, and it's like you got to go in person to experience it. It's yeah.
Or watch it on Novus or Shaw. Yeah,
Better in person.
So what I took away most from your talk is that there's a lot of creativity in places I think people don't normally think of creativity. You're talking about fishermen who run expensive fishing lodges, or the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and I just thought maybe you could speak to that a little bit, because I think sometimes here in an urban setting we get a little bit inwards in terms of what is creativity and where creativity can be found and where we can go to engage in something creative.
Yeah, thanks for that question. Actually, that was like sort of what I built it around, or what I justified, like, oh, I'm gonna go talk about fishing. Like when I was like, how am I really? I'm just gonna get up there and talk about fishing. It was. I really wanted to take you out of Google image search. I wanted to take you out of your blogs that you troll all the time, your Mashables, your whatever, wherever you go for inspiration as a designer or whatever, and show you these people that, and I didn't even realize that until I was really digging into it, is that it's everywhere. Like creativity is everywhere, and there's tons of inspiration wherever you look, and I feel like I'm really guilty of just looking online too, or just looking in Vancouver, or just looking, within arm's reach. But yeah, that's basically, thanks for asking that question, because that's what I sort of built this thing around.
Excellent.
So you win. You'll see.
Okay.
I forgot.
So that's going to wrap us up today, folks. And Bob, this is what? Let me look at my name. Here. Got it. I'm going to do it. That was my reminder. She's so good. Margaret Lopez, everybody. Bob, this is a thank you from us. It's a small token. Just can open that later. But thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark.
Round of applause for